is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
It must really be quite the honor to be thought of as the kings or queens of a genre. Think the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Madonna, Beyoncé, or Taylor Swift. Artists that have completely become synonymous with the style of music in which they perform, whether it's through their contributions to innovation of the sound or, quite frankly, through their track record of being the most popular artist or group to have ever done it. With that in mind, if I were to present the genre of pop punk to you and ask who the first band that pops in your head is, I would be willing to bet you'd immediately think of the undisputed kings of the sound, Blink-182. So without further ado, this is the story of Blink-182's classic All the Small Things. Originally formed as Blink in 1992, the band was the brainchild of Tom DeLonge and original drummer Scott Rayner, who met at Rancho Bernardo High School when Tom was transferred there after being expelled for getting drunk at a basketball game. The two became fast friends, and through their love of West Coast punk rock and board sports, Tom and Scott were introduced to a friend's sister's boyfriend by the name of Mark Hoppus, also in the local scene. Mark and Tom also hit it off, and like a pop-punk Lennon and McCartney, spent hours skating, writing songs, playing music, and, well, drinking. By 1993, Hoppus had broken up with his girlfriend, who disapproved of the band, and Blink began touring small local venues like community centers and high schools under the pretense that the group was a motivational band with a strong anti-drug message. Spoiler alert, that was a lie. As the band paid their dues, they quickly upgraded from false pretense school shows to legitimate music venues. And in 1994, they even convinced Mark Hoppus' manager at the local record store where he worked at to front them the money to record their official demo tape, Buddha. It was on Buddha where Blink were able to stretch their wings for the very first time and show off what would become their calling card. Catchy pop-punk bops and joke tracks, songs packed with self-deprecating irreverent humor that, according to Tom DeLonge, was heavily influenced by punk rock forefathers, the Descendants, with really punchy guitars, fast, simple, and formulaic nursery rhyme love songs. Honestly, looking back on Buddha, it's really more of an album for the purists. You definitely hear a lot of heart, and for 1994, it probably sounded quite fresh. But the production is sparse, the music is kind of repetitive, and the lyrics are pretty cringy, even though that's what they were going for. But it was enough to get Blink noticed by a legitimate punk rock record label, Cargo Music. The president of Cargo actually wasn't completely sold on Blink, but his son convinced his dad that these three young punks were the future of music. So, on a very tight budget and an even tighter timeline, Blink would release their first honest-to-goodness album called Cheshire Cat, which was a mixture of re-recorded tracks from Buddha and all new tracks from sessions at the West Beach Recorders Studio. On Cheshire Cat, the sophomoric themes were still prevalent, with more joke tracks like Benoit Balls and an ode to adult diapers aptly named Depends. But on the more serious songs, or as serious as Blink could bring themselves to be, there were themes of insecurity, love and relationships, and even some vulnerability wrapped up in a bouncy skate park sound. To be fair, Blink as a band always seemed pretty honest and confident in who they were, with DeLonge noting, "Every song of ours is a version of another punk song that I've heard and tried to make better. In the end, ours wind up a little different, but I know where the influence came from, and I think it's important to acknowledge that." Lead single M&M's was described by writer Joe Schumann as Blink in a microcosm. In less than 3 minutes, they nail their sonic colours to the mast. While Absolute Punk would reflect years later that Cheshire Cat was a good early indicator of what Blink-182 would turn out to be. Their sound wasn't quite as polished, but they were certainly miles ahead of a lot of their peers at the time. It was around this time that Blink officially became Blink-182, when an Irish rock band also called Blink threatened legal action against them for using a name that they had the rights to. In true Slacker style, the guys from the American Blink band ignored the request from their Irish nemesis, until the label threatened to just go ahead and change their name for them if they didn't think of something themselves, to which Mark, Tom and Scott responded by simply adding a random number to the end of their moniker. I mean, isn't that what we all do when a username online isn't available? After some seriously successful touring, including legendary performances on the freshly founded Warped Tour, Blink-182 were gaining a reputation as one of the most entertaining young underground bands around. partially for their exciting take on pop-punk jams, and partially because they were the wackiest onstage band this side of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. By March of '96, Blink-182 were the subject of a bidding war from the big leagues, with Epitaph, Interscope, and MCA Records all hoping to sign them. In a bit of a shocking move, the group signed with the struggling MCA with the intention of releasing a follow-up to Cheshire Cat, as they were the label that promised the band the most artistic freedom. Although rumour has it they did push a stop to Blink-182 releasing a Macarena parody entitled Hey, Wipe Uranus. So much for being a champion of the arts. Now mostly happily signed to a major label, the band released Dude Ranch in June of '97. With Dude Ranch, you could say I guess this was growing up for the guys, as second single Dammit absolutely blew up on mainstream radio in late 1997. With an earworm of an opening riff and a frantic pace of lyrical tongue twisters, Dammit is a self-indulgent, self-loathing hurricane of a pop-punk hit about, you guessed it, the perils of growing up through the lens of failed and flailing relationships. Honestly, this song has so much millennial cachet. I have half a mind to pivot this entire episode to a thesis on why Dammit is the single greatest song ever written. But in doing my research, it looks like critics at Kerrang and Stereo Gum have beat me to it. And to that I say, damn it. Hilariously, Blink-182 weren't expecting this at all. DeLonge noted that he thought it was strange that a song that they'd admittedly written as a spontaneous hypothetical ended up connecting best with such a large audience. And in their 2001 tell-all book called The Tales from Beneath Your Mum, both the band and their management could barely believe it when Blink-182 took to the Australian Warped Tour stage in early '98, fired up the opening riff of Dammit, and sent over 10,000 kids into a euphoric frenzy. But all was not rainbows and butterflies for the young punks. In a bit of a mysterious set of circumstances, Scott Rayner was fired from the band in mid-1998. Some stories recall it being over him struggling with alcohol abuse, with Dude Ranch producer Mark Trombino recalling to MTV, right after they signed with MCA, they were celebrating and Mark jumped off of something and broke both his feet. When he made the record, he had a cast on one foot and was in a wheelchair. I got the sense that they were bummed. Maybe that was the start of whatever came to be. Admitting, I didn't sense any major tension. While more wholesome accounts recall that Scott's departure was by mutual consent, he was quite young. He'd been unhappy with the choice to move to MCA and wanted to return to school. A few years later, Scott would speak with Chorus.fm, and while he would refuse to go scorched earth on his former bandmates, it's clear that there is still some bad blood. He would say, the best way for me to put it is that everything got kind of haywire in my personal life and in the band and with Mark and Tom. They wanted different things than me, and at the same time, our friendship was put to the test, and it kind of failed. They're doing things that they wanted to that I wouldn't have done, and vice versa. I'm a musician and I want to be successful at it, but not the kind of success that they have. Music turned into the music business, and I wasn't ready to deal with the game. And I was always the one saying, let's go this way, and they wanted to go that way. And so did everyone else surrounding the band. So guess who got kicked? Overboard. And yes, in case you're wondering, that final choice of words, Overboard, was intentional, as present-day Blink would release a song in the year 2000 called Man Overboard that allegedly alludes to the entire saga of removing Scott from the band. In any case, by July of '98, just weeks before heading out on a North American tour, Rayner was out, and Travis Barker, who the guys knew from a recent tour and temporary fill-in duties for Rayner, was in. Learning the band's catalogue incredibly quickly, becoming a fixture of the band's look and sound. As 1998 rolled into '99, the new look Blink began recording their third official studio album with veteran punk rock super producer Jerry Finn. You may recall from an earlier episode of Encore that the late great producer would also go on to produce an album by another group of pop-punk misfits, Sum 41's All Killer No Filler. Now that the boys had a bona fide hit under their belt, MCA was ready to break the bank for them. With a professional budget, Finn and Blink-182 spent the better part of 4 months recording their album, which they would eventually name Enema of the State. You get it? Enema. It's like enemy, but it's an enema, which is a medical procedure that involves shooting liquid up your butt. Get it? The title, paired with the album cover, which featured adult performer Janine Lindemulder, provocatively strapping on a latex glove, preparing to, assumedly, do just that. People had a lot of questions. Mark and Tom broke it down with much.
from what I hear from Mark.
Actually, getting back to the cover of the record thing, it's two different things. I mean, the front obviously is very tongue-in-cheek and a joke. It's called Enema of the State, so we have a sexy nurse putting on a rubber glove like to give an enema, and that's obviously a joke, almost like a cartoon. But then in real life, you know, finding someone that you want to be with and date and be in love with, you want somebody that's very genuine and real.
Right.
So, I mean, hopefully people can understand what we're saying, but also get the joke.
Right.
Or not understand us and pretend we're saying other things. Whatever you guys want to hear, you can hear it. Just pretend we're saying it.
There's a lot of misunderstanding.
Right.
A lot of misunderstanding. A lot of people say that we're misogynistic, that we're sexist, that we're a-holes. We are a-holes. That stands for asshole.
That's okay.
But we actually, you know what? We have been getting a lot of, for almost 8 years now, we've been doing the same thing. Yes, we are like this little punk band out of San Diego. We've been having naked people run around. We've been getting naked. We make fun of ourselves. We make fun of everybody. We love to see boobies. We love boobies. But we're not sexist at all.
Out of the operating room and back in the studio, producer Finn, who was also the mastermind behind Green Day's 1994 smash Dookie, knew just what the doctor ordered when it came to pushing punks to craft note-perfect takes of their songs. Sure, the band's whole brand at this point had been laissez-faire suburban pranksters who cared more about hijinks than hi-hats, but Finn knew just the right methods to accentuate the positive aspects of Blink-182's sound to not only create music that was authentic to their original nursery rhymes on steroids mantra, but also perfect for mainstream radio consumption. Or, as the band would put it,
the way that Jerry was able to get the best out of everybody, and everybody that Jerry worked with was convinced that they were Jerry's best friend, that Jerry was their favorite, that they were Jerry's favorite person in the band, and that their band was Jerry's favorite band. And he got the best out of everybody by talking the language that Travis knows, by talking to Tom for what Tom needed, getting the best out of me, Davey Havoc, Matt Skiba. Everybody that Jerry worked with got the same thing, and Jerry just loved music. He hated the spotlight at all. He wouldn't do press, he didn't care, but he would talk to the assistant engineer at the studio for an hour about a compressor that the guy asked him about. And he was so generous with his knowledge, and like most producers and engineers jealously hide their little tricks of EQs and little things like that, and mixers especially, because, you know, they don't want anybody using their techniques. And Jerry would invite people into the room and be like, oh, you want to know how I got that guitar sound? This is how we did it. And be like that. No ego at all pure love of music.
And he was so funny. But just teaching me how to play, like in the sense of like, that was the first time I had to play good in the studio. Like, you're out, you're out, you're out. That's not in pitch, or that's not in time. And I'm like, what the fuck are you listening to?
Yeah.
Sounds great. But I started to learn what he was hearing. And I started to learn what it takes to actually, you know, better yourself and do it right. So, and everything was analog then. There's no computer. So you can't go in there and edit this shit. You got to fucking play it or it's not going to get on there. So there was a lot of that I really, really valued. And just his attention to detail, and he was an audiophile. Like, he cared about he would spend hours of which cable he wants to use that goes from the head of 30 amps to the head of 30 speaker cabinets. So he's like, interchange each one and then try each cable and then try each mic, and then it's like fucking insane.
Travis fucking crazy. Like 2 days to get a snare sound? You fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
It would take me 6 hours, 7 hours to record the entire album, and he would spend twice as long just getting drum sounds.
Yeah.
So I would be like, you know, I'm only going to be here for like 6 or 8 hours, right? You know,
it was maddening.
It was so funny.
But it's cool to learn that in the beginning.
It was
and
awesome.
understand it, so you can make those choices later and go, I don't need to do that.
But he was getting your chops up, right? I mean, it is a school.
It's school.
I mean, all of it was school.
It was all school.
It's a school.
And that's what I really valued with him.
I mean, it's not like you guys went to school. You went to a band.
I learned everything from Jerry.
Yeah.
I learned like everything as far as recording and studio techniques and studio like etiquette.
That's not to say that the recording process was uptight and stuffy. The Blink Bros would simply not allow it. As Hoppus recalled, recording can get pretty monotonous, but at least we could laugh with Jerry. A pretty typical day would involve multiple takes for one part of one song, and then everyone would get naked and jump on Jerry. Ah yes, nudity. I'm sure that's the very last time we'll talk about that in this episode. Anyway, by the time Enema of the State was completed, the new-look Blink-182 were delighted with the end product, with Hoppus and DeLonge writing in the Tales from Beneath Your Mum. When it was done, we were so stoked. It was like a masterpiece for our band. We knew this was going to be the best thing we ever did. Lead single, What's My Age Again, picked up right where Dammit left off as a call to arms against the very thought of growing up. This time, with tongue fully in cheek, What's My Age Again mixed skate punk loser self-awareness with absurd irony. The lyrics chronicle the antics of the clueless, immature Blink boys who are more interested in making prank calls and watching TV than putting in the effort to make relationships work. And what exactly was their age again? Even one of the most iconic lyrics from the track, Nobody Likes You When You're 23, was inconsistent in an ironic meta sort of way. Mark Hoppus, who penned the track and sings those famous words, would have been no younger than 26 when he wrote it. For what it's worth, Hoppus does claim the track isn't exactly autobiographical, and 23 does rhyme best with walked away from me and hung up on me, so it gets a pass. What's My Age Again was an immediate hit, shooting up to number 2 on the Billboard Modern Rock track, only to be bested at the top by Red Hot Chili Peppers' comeback single Scar Tissue. I wonder where you could find a podcast with more details about the circumstances around that release. And then it became the band's first single to truly cross over to the pop charts proper, peaking on the Billboard's Hot 100 at 58. Between Dammit and Age Again, the people had spoken. Blink-182 weren't just punk popular, they were pop, full stop, and the bubble was nowhere near bursting. Released to radio in September of 1999, the follow-up to What's My Age Again was almost destined to take the world by storm. By far the sweetest sounding and most honest-to-goodness pop song the band had ever written, All the Small Things, the song had very little of the angst of anything Blink-182 had presented previously. Written essentially as a love song by Tom DeLonge about his future ex-wife Jennifer, Small Things chronicles the little sweet things she would do for him and how much he appreciates her. His little windmill, as he affectionately would call her, immortalized in the lyrics. The song is definitely easy to sing along to, partially because it includes the easiest chorus this side of Hanson's Bop. Na 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 na. And what inspired this masterful and melodic use of the English language? Well, as DeLonge told Craig Kilborn, he couldn't really think of any other words.
So, and it's a song called All the Small Things, it's a pretty little ballad about a girl, na-na, whatever, it's na-nas, And so, like, all
what
these...
What did you say?
Na-na. I put na-nas in it because I couldn't think of any words,
What does that mean?
Well, it means a lot. It's really... I can't go into it right now. And so what happened was, so I wrote this song, and, we sold some records.
As Rolling Stone would put it, All the Small Things would be the song that introduced Blink-182 to listeners on a mass scale, out of theaters and clubs to full-scale arena tours. The track would rapidly shoot up the Billboard Hot 100 all the way to number 6, with the airplay on both pop and rock radio to back it up, and critics revered it for exactly what it was. An irresistible pop-punk anthem, as Rolling Stone would say, or as Blender magazine would anoint it, a pop-punk watershed. Even Pitchfork called it a sensitive song with the fizzy pleasure of the melody capturing the simplicity of young love. Just over a year ago, a recently reunited, Blink-182 did a fantastic feature-length interview with Apple Music's Zane Lowe, and they talked about the monumental moment that they and their label knew they'd made it.
But that was a wild ride. When we made that record, I remember I went in and sat with the president of the label. We had no idea if the band was gonna be like irrelevant that year or not. You don't know. We're literally just still in clubs and shit. And the president goes, 3 things are gonna happen in the next 6 months. You're gonna be more famous than you ever thought you could be. You're gonna make more money than you ever thought you could be. And you're gonna be in arenas by fall.
This is the most wicked industry I've ever been in my life.
Now
get off the Corinthian leather and get the out of my office.
So he says this, I am not joking. He says this, and I literally laughed out loud and spit my drink. I swear to you, it was an audible laugh. I thought the guy was so high. And we were in arenas that fall. And I do remember at the last show at our first arena tour, I walked out after soundcheck or something, and it's an empty arena on stage, and I remember I just did this little prayer. I was just like really grateful that I had one chance in my life to play a show like that, or a series of shows like that.
Yeah.
Because I did not think that was gonna happen again. I thought we barely squeezed into there with the little bit of hype we had that year, but things just kept going. It's just wild.
It was at this point in time that Blink-182 became a bit of a paradox. They were undoubtedly one of the biggest bands in the world, but existentially speaking, what exactly were they? Even at the time, through some uneasy self-deprecation, Blink-182 knew they were at a crossroads. Here they are with much as Rachel Perry.
I think.
It's crazy.
As a punk band, I think
I know.
this is just.
It's not punk anymore.
Yeah.
I've retained my punkness. Mark lost his like a year ago.
I lost mine in Vietnam.
Did you?
I lost my punk credibility in Vietnam.
How old are you?
27.
Okay.
So he actually
you
fought
went
in
there
Vietnam.
after the war and lost it.
Yeah, I went there on vacation last year.
And just thought I'm just
Lost
gonna
it
lose
there.
my punk.
Yeah, I wasn't in the war. It was
Right.
Vietnam. I was just seeing the place.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
like,
It's interesting. It's interesting to see where we were like 5 years ago and where we are now. It's rad though. We're just happy that people just like us.
Finally.
Finally,
After
somebody.
10 years of touring and sleeping on people's floors and driving in a van and everything, now people actually like our band.
Yeah.
No, we're just happy. We're happy.
So, were they a rock band? Yeah, I think you could say that. Were they a pop band? I mean, yeah, of course they were. Their fandom was decidedly mainstream. But were they punk?
Do you guys find it at all ironic that you're sitting there being facetious and making fun of like these pop bands, but this is what's happening to you?
Hey, that's why I say we're not making fun of it anymore. We want to live that life. We actually want to dress like that in the video.
Actually, I think that we come from a different place than those pop bands do. I mean, we are just as we are.
Just as God
We're
made
just
us.
as God made us, and I think we come across as very, hopefully, real, and people know about us and know that we don't have like a stage act or a persona. We are just as we are on stage as we are in real life, and I hope that people can understand that and appreciate it. Whereas a lot of these bands, and I'm not saying anyone in particular, but it seems like they're very manufactured and artificial. Like they say, okay, we need like the crazy guy with the funny hair. We need like, the white kid that looks all cute. We need like the rapper guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about pop music, I mean, they all can dance, they all can sing.
They can all sing and dance way better than we can, though, for sure.
The only thing that sucks, though, is they don't write their own songs, And we respect anybody that can just write their own music, regardless of what it is. So yes, we reserve the right to make fun of everybody, but if you, at least if it's your own art or whatever, at least you can kind of get something for it. But a lot of these bands don't even do that, so it kind of sucks for them,
On one hand, the band remembers the moment in time, the movement they were a part of fondly.
I mean, we take a lot of pride in like where we came from, in the bands we grew up on, in the scene that we grew up in. I feel a real strong connection to the scene we came out of, and I feel like we're one of the very few bands holding that flag of a time period where that type of music came out and revolutionized the world in a way. The whole pop punk thing was a beautiful musical movement, and we were so fortunate to be a part of that. And we're kind of, I feel like we're carrying that torch, I feel a lot of responsibility with that. We grew up with bands like The Descendants and NoFX, Fugazi, and all these Fat Records, Epitaph, and Lookout Records, and it's like that stuff was like so influential to us. And
Records.
yeah, that's yeah. But
You got it first, the smart one.
But they really were. I mean, and it changed the way we dressed and what we talked about and what we did on the weekends, and we can't lose that. It's in our DNA.
But equally, I got to say, you're one of those rare bands that ultimately, that whole scene got commodified real fast.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
It was just like, boom, like I said, MTV, and you guys leaned into it. We're like, well, we can have fun with this now too. We can make a music video. It's going to go #1. We can play that. We can play this role, But you were commodified, and then you commodified it back and turned it into industry and built this and much more out of that.
And while they always remained steadfast in their principles, there were certainly a fair share of OG punks who vocally were against what these SoCal skate punks were selling to the masses.
There's also, too, when we were getting a lot of the fame back then, we had a lot of people that were revolting against it because that's just kind of how the punk rock scene worked back then.
That's what I was kind of asking about before.
So you get a little bit
how
of
the reaction was.
You can act like you don't care, but you care. Then you start to guess yourself a little bit. I mean, it was so funny. I mean, we played a show in Europe one time, and there's these pissed off punk rock kids that were like throwing bottles and shit because we did the boy band video where we made fun of the boy bands, but the label took stills from that video and used them as posters, and we looked like a boy band. And so when we did the next album, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, we're like, we're wearing black, we're wearing all black, no more color.
Ah, yes, the video. As we've discussed so many times on Encore, more than any other era in music, the late 90s into the mid-2000s were the golden age of the music video. And Blink-182 were certainly no exception to that rule. Not to be upstaged by the What's My Age Again music video, which saw the guys running down the streets of California naked as the day they were born for a full 2.5 minutes, and includes a cameo from their controversial album cover star. The video for All the Small Things is now considered one of the most iconic music videos of all time. Ever the self-aware scamps, Blink-182 turned the concept of pop punk as pop music on its head with the Small Things video, with cutting parodies of the cookie-cutter bubblegum pop that had been a staple of mainstream music near the turn of the millennium. Included on their hit list of hitmakers, Backstreet Boys with their sultry I Want It That Way and unnecessarily wet Quit Playing Games With My Heart videos, the dead-eye dance moves of boy bands NSYNC and 98 Degrees, the beachy intrigue of Christina Aguilera's Genie in a Bottle, and of course a creepy pastiche of Britney Spears' Sometimes video which sees Tom DeLonge violate one of those beach-sighting telescope things with his tongue. You know what I'm talking about. But the band insisted that the video was created with no malicious intent, telling Much that they had a newfound affinity for their pop targets.
We love Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. You know, we were talking about this earlier today. It's almost not cool to make fun of pop music because everyone else does it.
It's actually more punk to say, yeah,
I like
Backstreet Boys.
I've been singing this Ricky Martin song for like a month, and I can't get it out of my head.
Sing it, Tom, please.
She's all I ever had. It's the way she makes me feel. Hey, that's a good song.
Speaking with writer Joe Schumann for his book The Band, The Breakdown and The Return, the video's director Marco Seega actually admitted he was initially worried it would offend the pop-loving youth of a nation and the MTV crowd, but as he says, it had the opposite effect. The video put Blink at that sort of pop level with those other bands we were making fun of. After all, he noted, Blink now had the backing of a major record company, just like the synthesized bands they were spoofing. Needless to say, the video was a smash hit. It received major airplay on Much and MTV, won Best Group Video at the VMAs, and proved that bands, namely Blink-182 and their pop rock proteges like Avril, Good Charlotte, Simple Plan, and Sum 41 really could be both things at once. So it wasn't much of a surprise that when fans began to gravitate to their punk-infused hits and the wacky videos that often accompanied them. Reflecting again with Low, it really was a writing-on-the-wall moment for the face of pop music altogether.
You know, I think about the All the Small Things video as well, which at the time, you know, we all thought was hilariously funny, but kind of, you know, really ultimately was the single most important factor in completely, utterly destroying the boy band phenomenon of that time. I mean, that was the beginning of the end.
We're the Nirvana to glam.
To him, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Enema of the State would go on to sell more than 15 million records worldwide off of the back of the success of What's My Age Again and All the Small Things, and it wouldn't stop there. Everyone who owns a copy of 2005's Greatest Hits knows that their next two albums, 2001's Innuendo-laden Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and 2003's self-titled or untitled effort, kept the Blink-182 train rolling full steam ahead with massively popular singles like The Rock Show, Stay Together for the Kids, Feeling This, and of course the meme-worthy I Miss You, which immortalized the way pop-punk fans pronounced the word yad. Sorry, I mean had. To this very day. Then, after years of non-stop success, a mixture of burnout, creative frustrations, and personal priorities began to erode Blink-182, initially announcing an indefinite hiatus in 2005. Following the death of their mentor, the aforementioned Jerry Finn, and a nearly fatal airplane crash that saw Travis Barker as one of only two survivors, Blink decided to reunite in 2008 to try and recapture the magic, feeling like life was too short not to try and make music together again. Unfortunately, their follow-up album in 2011 called Neighborhoods didn't do much to reignite that spark, and there were constant fights between the band, namely Tom and Mark. In 2014, Tom DeLonge would quit Blink-182 before temporarily rejoining and then quitting again in 2015. The remaining members would publicly call DeLonge out as ungrateful and disingenuous, feeling that he wasn't being honest with his commitment to the band and was an overbearing and uncooperative presence as the band tried to find new label representation. DeLonge would tell his own side of the murky story, noting in a release on social media that he never really planned on quitting and that it was actually Mark and Travis being the overbearing ones, actually in bad faith to delay his other projects inside and outside of music. Blink-182 would replace DeLonge with Alkaline Trio's Matt Skiba and released 2 albums with him in 2016 and 2019. Hardship would strike the band again when in 2021, Mark Hoppus revealed a nearly deadly lymphoma diagnosis that he luckily was able to overcome with intense chemotherapy over a 6-month fight. Hoppus' health struggle turned out to be the catalyst that the guys needed to mend fences with each other. Travis had been in touch with Tom sporadically over the years since his departure and held no ill will, but it was Mark and Tom who needed to work things out. Slowly, yet surely, the brothers in arms worked through their issues and officially announced the return of Tom DeLonge to Blink-182 in October 2022 and hit the road with a massive world tour, which, if you were lucky enough to attend at one of the group's 7 Canadian stops, you certainly would have heard All the Small Things in all of its glory right near the end of the set list, even if DeLonge doesn't fully understand how its popularity has remained after all of these years.
You know, we have a Blink song called All the Small Things. I'm like, I sound like I'm fucking 4 years old. All the small things. I was like, and people still celebrate. I get like literally 4 times a month. There's a cover band somewhere playing that, and someone I know filmed it and sent it to me. And I go, really? Like, you know, it's like Hanson. You know, it's like these kids playing the little pop. Yeah. It's funny. Like, we had a lot of really cool songs in Blink, and it's weird to me that that's the one. Like, Metallica has like Master of Puppets. We got that All Small Things. Just like, you know, we had better ones than that, but whatever.
Within a year of reuniting, the now middle-aged punks released their first record as the Blink-182 we all know and love, entitled One More Time, and a surprise deluxe version of the album dropped earlier this year. Now just finished with the aforementioned tour, Tom DeLonge admitted to Spin in August of this year that it's once again time for a little break from Blink. But as All the Small Things prophetically claims, say it ain't so, I will not go. Because for all intents and purposes, Blink-182 will now be the priority forever for Mark, Tom, and Travis, with a whole new beginning on the horizon. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Blink-182's All the Small Things on Encore, with new episodes every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.